the topic, as was announced, is about the uncertainty that we're facing. And as we know, it's a key word. And the uncertainty is the fact that we're not able, I'm sorry, I'm too tall. Sorry. And uncertainty is the fact that we cannot make forecasts. And this is obviously an issue and a challenge. So the panel that was put together is this second edition of the Sustainable Vegetable Oil Conference, is trying to provide some answers and some arguments to three crucial topics. On one side is the production of energy, and energy for food security particularly, and we look at it from the side of the FAO. The second one is the impact that the UDR, so the European Union Deforestation Regulation, might have on the supply chain of vegetable oils. And the third one is about global warming and climate change, and which are the strategies and the policies to try to mitigate the impact of global warming on the supply chain on vegetable oils. So I'm happy to call the three speakers here on the stage, and particularly David Laborde from the FAO, that is here, and then my friend Jelmen Haaze from the Belgian Alliance, that I don't see in the room, but it means it's online. And then we have Edvin Aldrian, who is the Vice Chair of the first working group for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So I should go first with David Laborde. So if you want to take the stage, you're speaking from there. We have, just as a general rule, 15 minutes. So since I assume you're European, please stay in the 15 minutes. And I was told not to take questions, but I can make questions. So just to go, you know, I'm around Italian. I just like to go around the rules, but I leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here today. And so I think I have some slides, but so we will see. And yes, I think we are talking about a very important topic on this question of, on one hand, how we can make our system more resilient, while addressing still the need of the world. Yes, that is about providing food, providing healthy food, but also addressing the energy need.
If there is a technical issue,
okay.
Can you go without? Yes.
I can go without. I just checking an eye on.
But they work.
Okay.
Here they are.
I'm not sure if you see anything or not. But okay. So the situation we are facing in the last several years is actually after a long decline in global hunger. So I will just start by hunger. Starting in 2015, we have seen a rise in that. And why we have seen this increase is actually because the world has been through a number of shocks. And you will see more of this story in some flagship publication we have at FAO, that is a state of food security and nutrition. And as I was saying, starting in 2015, we have seen a stop in the decrease of hunger. Then we start to see a small increase. And with the COVID pandemic, we have seen a large increase in number of the people facing hunger. And today, we are about 740 million of people that still, on a regular basis, doesn't have enough calories, doesn't have enough food. And on top of that, you have 3.2 billion people that cannot afford healthy diets. So it's not like if the world doesn't have a problem of food security and nutrition. We still have one, and it is becoming more important in the recent years. And so why we have seen this deterioration of the situation is mainly due to a series of shocks. So the COVID-19 that has translated actually in a huge economic shock. People have lost income. We had climate shock that have hurt different food baskets around the world and has put a high pressure actually on the average productivity of the agricultural system in the world, slowing it down. The last decade, for example, between 2010 and 2020, in average agricultural productivity in the world has increased by 1.2% compared to 1.7% in the previous decade. So we have a slowing down. It's not taking place everywhere and for every crops, but that's an issue. And one of the drivers is climate shock. And then we had conflict. In many cases, it can be, unfortunately, local conflict. You can think in Africa about the Sahel region. You can think about some civil war, some also civil unrest, and more recently, with the war in Ukraine, some perturbation on global market that have actually impacted the trade in grains, but also the trade in oilseed with the role of the sunflower. So all of these discussions are really put more attention about how we can make our system more resilient. And I will come back on this after. Another important discussion that can we rely on trade? Can we trust international trade to deliver on food security? And then there was a discussion of today on the nexus between food security and energy security. That for many countries means actually a nexus between food, water, and energy. But we don't trade water so much directly. In some cases, we share water resource between countries, so that can be part of geopolitical tension. But let's keep in mind that especially for low-income countries, and within countries for low-income households, the two main sources of expenditure is food and energy. So every time you have a shock on food and energy, but you have more poor people. And you have some countries that can go bankrupt. So that's the sad reality. And today, you know, even after the COVID crisis is finished, we were hoping to see a recovery in 2022, so an improvement of the situation. And on this graph, so you see in blue the number of people that are undernourished. So, you know, once again, in the last 4 years, there is 120 million more people that are undernourished on a regular basis on Earth. Last year, this number has just remained flat. We have not recovered. So that's the key and critical concern. We can think about it as a consumer, but we also have to think that, unfortunately, a lot of these hungry people are also poor farmers. And that suffer from lack of income, lack of productivity, lack of investment. And so they are, at the same time, the victim of the food insecurity, but can also be used to be mobilized to solve part of the problem. Now, as you know, we are still in a very difficult geopolitical situation. The price of most of the key commodity at the agricultural front went down since last year, but energy prices are up. We have now the barrel at $95. That here also put pressure on a number of countries that have left the previous crisis with high level of debt. Okay, so the macroeconomic condition make things difficult. And for a number of countries that have tried to protect their population by increasing subsidy on food, subsidy on energy, in the last few years, they cannot continue. So that put an agricultural pressure on policymakers. And if we look at the projection, actually 5-6 years ago, we were projecting the blue line, so saying, okay, we are on track not to achieve SDG 2, but to make progress. And now the situation is going to, if the world is better in the coming years, improve, but we will not recover at the speed that we are not going to recover the lost years. So really there is a need and a momentum to invest more in agriculture, to invest more in food security and to do it in a sustainable way, and where the oilseed sector is going to play an important role, but a role different depending where you are in the world. You are in some part of the world today, there is overconsumption of vegetable oil. We have seen the example of China. In some part of the world today, we don't consume enough vegetable oil because when you are very poor and you start to eat staple, actually adding vegetable oil in your diet is the first source of bringing some micronutrients. So we should really think that there is a full spectrum of situation and a rebalancing that will need to take place. In order to make our system more resilient, and I will come back on the energy aspect after, as I've said, we need to do more investment, and it's a combination of different activities. Part of it is linked to conflict. So how we make sure that humanitarian action and peaceful action go hand in hand with food security. We need to deal with the climate situation, so both on the mitigation front, but also on the adaptation, and different crops in different locations have different potential. We want to make sure also that value chain deliver on healthy diets, because in many cases, one product or one commodity is not bad or good in itself. It's how you combine it, it's how much you use in some products. So the whole distribution of food and food processing has been part of the transformation we need. We need to have social protection that help households in dire situation, especially when very shocked. But we don't want to have energy or food subsidies that reinforce bad behavior or reinforce waste of resources. Because when things are cheap, people don't care about them. And neither energy or food should be cheap. It should have the right price to trigger the right behavior. The water aspect, as I've said, is very important. And in this context, we have to rethink about policies. The two more things I want to say, and before I start to tackle the elephant in the room when we talk about energy and food and vegetable oil that will be biofuel. When we think about resilience, because that's the topic of this session, we need to think that it has different components on which you can work on it through different channels. So basically the resilience is really the capacity of people from recover from shock. The reality of the world we are in today, we have more shocks. And even if tomorrow we have global peace and all governments work hand in hand, climate change is not going to disappear. So climate shock will still be there. So we still need to build more resilience. And we need to make sure that it covers the different dimensions of food security that you see on this slide, meaning that we want to maintain continuous supply of food, of good quality food, and for everyone, both in terms of income or gender, and to make the system more resilient to disruption. But when you think about agri-food system and when you think about resilience, that's where also you have to think that resilience occurs at different scale. You can start on the farm. You can make one farm more resilient with some technology. You can think about a value chain or sectors with action that will be done within the sector. But then you can scale up at the system level. What we have seen, for instance, last year in Europe is if there is a lack of sunflower oil, that's a short-term problem, but then you can move to rapeseed oil. But of course, you need to change legislation, you need to adapt labeling of product and things like this. So a number of regulations make your system more flexible, more agile. But it's not about, can we produce always more sunflower? No, it's, do we have at one point different alternative of vegetable oil? And can we shift from one to another? And you can go up and up. And so for policymakers, they are not so much in many cases interested at the resilience of a specific actor, but more at the system, when obviously when you work on a specific sector, you care about the resilience of your value chain. So just to say that this dialogue on resilience has to be seen at different scale, and different actors can contribute in different manners to that. Because being more resilient has a cost also, If it was easy to be more resilient, everyone will be more resilient. But it reshapes your investment, and you have some time to decide, do you want to be more productive, to be more efficient, or to be more resilient? Now, thinking about, and that will be my concluding slide, and the bridge to what I want to say about vegetable oil and energy. These different shocks we have seen can come from economic nature, from political nature, from biophysical, but we also see some response and some policy that can make things worse. So, typically when you start to have shock and that you start to see export restriction, that accelerate and amplify the initial shock. That also reduce the trust of consumers in the world market. So this policy response can make an initial shock worse and actually undermine the resilience of the system. So here you see policies that were not there appear, make things worse. But then you have also policies that are there and are too rigid and actually complexify the system. And that's one of the main issues we have with a lot of the biofuel policy today, including on the biodiesel in the world. There is very few cases, both in terms of countries and market conditions, where biodiesel today can compete with fossil fuel. We can say, oh, it's because fossil fuel doesn't pay the real price of carbon and things like this, but that's the reality. So you see mandate, you see quota of incorporation, and now let's keep in mind that half of the soybean oil in the US, crushed in the US, end up in biodiesel in the US. That's a huge attraction of something that normally was used for human consumption and the oleochemical sectors. And last year, that was one of the problems, because also this is mandatory. You have very strong incentive to not miss your target in terms of incorporation. You still have subsidies in terms of incorporation. So oil, vegetable oil, was going to biodiesel before going to where it was needed, including in crossing the Atlantic last year to adjust to some of the problems coming from the war in Ukraine. The situation in Indonesia was similar, and here you see a combination between mandatory policy with high ambitious target that can make sense in some situation, but when they don't adapt to the reality of the world, that can be a problem. And to keep them, then you add export restriction. So really how we make sure that we want to achieve some energy target. The agricultural sectors has a potential. Vegetable oil can contribute, but that should be market-driven. That should not be policy-driven. Because what the shock of the last few years have shown is actually markets react pretty fast. Policies react sometimes too late, not in the right direction. So that's where we want to make sure also that there is a right set of information. At FAO, we have the pleasure to host the AMIS, the Agricultural Market and Information System. Last year, it was decided to add vegetable oil to the type of commodity that are monitored and tracked, and on which we can provide more information to make sure that policymakers make the right choice at the right time. And obviously, the private sector can contribute to that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I think they deserve a big applause. Thank you so much. And David, representing the FAO and actually leading is the director of the Agri-Food and the Economic Division. And very interestingly, beside talking about uncertainty and targeting resiliency as the answer to this uncertainty. On the other side, allow me a joke. David, you also sort of mentioned the law of Murphy. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong right now. So uncertainty comes with the law of Murphy. Very interesting. The fact of investment, so not decreasing investment, but increasing investment to generate more food security, and certainly very much appreciated the last point that you elaborated about the market-driven and the policy. And certainly lately we have experienced, particularly in the vegetable oil market, but not just in that, some ambiguous policies around the world, trade policy, but also policies that are not meant to trade, but at the end they impact on trade. Talking about unclear, I wouldn't say ambiguous, unclear policies, I would turn the floor to Jelmen, that should be connected online if I'm not mistaken. And Jelmen is representing, he's the Secretary General of the Belgian Alliance for Sustainable Palm Oil, and he has definitely a privileged outlook over the UDR and the implication of the UDR, and also, I would say, the transposition of the UDR. So Europe has created this gigantic new regulation, but now the countries are supposed to implement it. It seems that the process is going very slowly. So thanks, Jelmen, for being here with us. We probably hear you. We don't hear you. So this is the second time it happens, so it's not the fault of the speaker, but it's the fault.
Yeah.
Now we hear you. Thanks, Jelmen. Floor is yours.
It's good that there's no censorship indeed, but thank you very much already for having me here, for the opportunity. Yeah, happy to be here, and indeed, as you said yourself in the introduction, the key word is uncertainty, very much so. Also elements that I picked up from the previous discussions on climate, fuel security, human rights, and that rebalancing is needed, and this of course creates a lot of the uncertainty. Previous speaker also talked about investments and food security, and today I shall try to shed a bit light on how the regulator responds, how do we understand our sector, current practices, and how do we evolve in this new regulatory environment. So I'll share my screen. So first, who we are, and indeed, well, up until spring, we were as a Belgian alliance, but our members have asked to go beyond that, so we've dropped the B in our alliance name. Our members is Egremont van de Moorpe Ferrero, Liprobel, which unites some refiners in Belgium, Royal Lacroix, Natra, Ciper, and Puratos. We're also talking with a few other big players in the industry, and together we would represent around about 35% of palm oil consumption in Europe. The regulatory environment, and it's important, the previous speaker already talked about investments and how investments can indeed drive sustainability. On top, in the top circle, you see EU taxonomy regulation. This is for investments, and the EU taxonomy regulation already sets goals and says investments in Europe should contribute to 6 goals that they have then identified. Climate is one of them, of course, and then water. Then you see corporate sustainability reporting standards, also to help investors, but also to help assessment in general. The corporate sustainability reporting standards for around 70% of EU industry GDP will standardize reporting. All that affects us, but the bottom right in the red, you see 3 big regulations or directives that give teeth to all of this. So there's the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, the Forced Labour Regulation, and the EU Deforestation Regulation. And to all of this, they take out what the EU considers the most important elements, and they give teeth to it in terms of making companies liable for what they are doing and for what they're purchasing. Around all this, if companies want to communicate, there's also a Green Claims Directive, which basically says that whatever you communicate needs to be factual. You need to be able to prove it. Against this background, we talked today about the EUDR, the Deforestation Regulation. Very important, as you see in 2024, today it enters into force. There was already an agreement in 2022, it enters into force, and the active obligations for the operators will enter into force in 2024. There will be several reviews, 2025 and 2026, about the scope. Will it be only on forests, and will it only be about the current commodities, which is palm oil, cocoa, soy, wood, cattle, cocoa, coffee, rubber, and some derived products, or will it indeed need to be broader? Main elements, it's mandatory. It's for all operators that place relevant products on the EU market or export them. And what is placing on the market, it might be a first buyer, or it might be someone that uses it as an ingredient into a commodity or into a product. Commodity selected, as I said, palm, soy, wood, cattle, cocoa, coffee, rubber, some derived products. Non-discrimination, It's domestically produced and also imported commodities and derived products. Progressive scope, initially covering selected commodities and derived products to be updated regularly. The cut-off date of the 31st of December 2020 aims to minimize disruption for smallholders and facilitate satellite monitoring. The EU talks about a benchmarking system that will assign risk to countries or regions according to risk of deforestation, a standard by default, and then there will indeed be specific obligations for the operators, information requirements for low risk, due diligence for standard and high risk, so risk management for the standard and high risk category. Inspections, member states will perform inspections based on the risk level on 9%, 3% or 1% of products. Cooperation with partner countries. If a country is considered to be in a high risk level, already the regulation says that the Commission is obliged to enter into dialogue and to find ways to support that country and to find ways indeed to help farmers in that country to meet the requirements. Important, EUDR is about due diligence, and that'll come back again later. It's due diligence rules for companies that want to place relevant products on the market. Important, they will also be required to collect precise geographical information on the farmland, where commodities have been grown, so that commodities can be checked for compliance. The list of commodities will be regularly reviewed, take into account new data, and the Commission will run a benchmarking system that will assess countries or parts thereof and their level of risk of deforestation and forest degradation. So that's the summary. A key question, harmonization. Due diligence is a trend, we could say. There are many due diligence initiatives on member state level. However, material scope varies. Can be smaller or larger companies, can also be more or less commodities that are considered, can be deforestation, can be environment, can be human rights. But there are already a few countries that have adopted laws. For some, there is a political process going on. There's a civil society action going on in quite a few countries. So this is definitely a trend, and this is something unavoidable.
This area, this is very suitable for palm oil. And then this is the data for palm oil. Usually they have this data, you can use this data for modeling. I myself is including a modeling guy. So I can doing this kind of criteria of modeling study. So you look at the palm oil suitability study and then you change parameter of the palm oil in this area and then you see what happened in the in couple of the scenario. The scenario permits you to change this by doing upper and lower temperature and then many things. You can do this and then you can see how much the present day palm oil suitability and up to 100 years. So by doing this, you can see what happened in the palm oil suitability in the 2050 and 2100, something like that. This is possible in the modeling, which is not possible before that. So this is the answer for us. Palm oil suitability in the year 2100, it is very much declined in the southern America, and then but still suitable for the Africa and Indonesia, Malaysia. I think this is still very good news for us. So this is the present day suitability. This is the next near term is 2070 and the longer term 2100. So you can see the still very suitable for Indonesia, Malaysia. So I think this is based on different modeling. So this is before by scientist calculation. Then this one is this is under my team calculation. This is for very moderate and then very harsh climate change issue. So this one is, you can see even 2100 is still very suitable for Indonesia and Malaysia. So this is a summary for palm oil suitability under future climate change for Indonesia. And then you see that still very suitable for Indonesia and Malaysia. And then you can see that there are some area which has very much declined in the productivity of palm oil. These are the methods that we are used in my team for the. This is good for assessment report number 5. So people can use this one, and this is for maybe the GAPKI or Association for Palm Oil Production in Malaysia, Indonesia want to use this model. This is welcome, and then this is the model scenario that is for scenario II1B, II2, and so on like this. Okay, so the palm oil and the climate change, you know, there is no consensus on the ultimate net goal and so on like this, and then it is affected for food security and considerably very resilient for adaptation and climate change. So until 2050, and then after that 2100 and so on like this. And some people already talk about the European Parliament resolution on palm oil. This is introduced in 2017 and so on like this. This is our note for us. This is maybe we have to limit ourselves. And then we know that European for anti-deforestation. I think in Indonesian region, Indonesian government are already taking care of that. Because this is story of Indonesia government. I myself working for government. I help many government issue on the trial case of the forest fire in Indonesia. This is a history of the forest fire in Indonesia. Right now we use the data from the satellite. So the data from satellite can be used for European standard for anti-deforestation. This can be used because we use the same data. I think everybody use the same. For if there is a forest fire, they will use the same data. So.
Thank you. It's a personal message.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
They don't see it. You just, if you can conclude, please.
Okay. So if my solution for this, our data is ready for the use of European Union against deforestation. We use the same data, I think, because next one is we use the same data for the IPCC global stocktake. Global stocktake will even use your data for your national contribution for climate change. I cannot see my graph there.
Yeah, they are there. Don't worry, you see them from the screen. If you can get to the conclusion, because we're really running out of time.
So, okay, if it is as a climate expert, I help government of Indonesia to work on the deforestation. I help the trial of some company to the forest fire. When forest fire and bioenergy, this is plant and so on like this. It is very potential of the renewable untapped. I heard that during my flight here, there is a government of Indonesia. They established the carbon bourse. The carbon bourse is the market for carbon. It's already open this week. This is very good for Indonesia and then for the European Union and so on like this. Okay, I think you can read my data here.
Yeah, if you can get to the conclusion, please, Mr.
Yeah, this is from calculation. I important thing is if you need a clearance for 1 hectare, you need only 1/3 of the virgin forest to balance. And the maritime continent is highly suitable for palm oil, even year 2100. The future scenario is indicate the palm oil is Indonesia and Malaysia is still available after 2070. And then they need to do impact modeling using soil dynamic and the IPCC model scenario as long as the soil moist. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Edvin. You can please your seat. Unfortunately, we have a debt, and we owe an apologies to Mr. Jelmen Haaze that was actually talking to us, and he was giving a very important, some very important arguments around the UDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulation, and something has happened here in Mumbai. The electricity line was cut off, and therefore we completely lost Jelmen, but here is back. Jelmen, sorry, I have to apologize from the entire organization for what has happened. Next Sustainable Vegetable Oil Conference will be on the electricity grid, for sure. Apologize for this. And again, you have to apologize me if I give you only 2, maximum 3 minutes to summarize with possibly 1 or 2 slides if you have them, or with the last part of your remarks. Thank you so much, and again, apologies from here, Mumbai.
No problem, and indeed, we talk a lot about AI and so on these days, but still, it's a challenge, and we maybe should not rely too much. Well, in 2 or 3 slides, what I've said is in summary, indeed, well, the regulation is embedded in a larger environment also to drive sustainable investment, to harmonize reporting, and to see to what extent companies can be made liable. And very important element in that is this environment makes or asks for enhanced transparency, traceability. We cannot think I'm certified, I'm safe. Certification can be used in a risk assessment procedure, but it's not a green lane. Responsibility, liability remains with the company. So it is very important. There will be other elements that are needed, and that's what we are exploring. For us, we are exploring joint solutions. Hoping it will blow over does not work. Working on your own solution is very expensive, and you risk all coming with different answers. Creating joint strategic intent, sharing information, interaction, communication. That's our strategy. For that, we work in partnership, trust, value, cooperation, and sustainability. Only as such can it lead to increased trust, create economies of scale, increasing resilience of the value chain, more sustainable palm oil on the market. Very important for us. We want to continue with this commodity. Can contribute to shared understanding, better information, also customers, government, other stakeholders in a level playing field, and very important considering local context. This should not be some kind of ivory tower approach. It is something that we need to do together, ideally, and that we need to work, and that we need to talk, and we need to communicate, and we need to find and harmonize our solutions. That is crucial. From a development perspective, it considers food as part of a system, so we are indeed increasingly connected, and that's the next step of sustainability at connection. Industry statement, vision paper, what are we doing? We're trying to understand better what is happening. We are trying indeed to look at what is the expectation, the identification of the expected standards, and what are the internal controls that we need. What is risk assessment and monitoring, the new risk factors, a clear operational risk framework in line with risk appetite needs to be developed. That's what we are doing right now. And then from that, we will follow a governance framework to design and implement a strategy and delivery of organizational priorities in monitoring, reporting, and engagement, if necessary. Technology-enabled solutions will be built or will be used from others. So I think that's in a nutshell with a very important element there, and that's a call of doing things together, trying to understand the environment together, and trying to really ready up for this new environment together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jelmen, and I think he deserves a big applause, please, because for what happened. But I want to give a good news. Mr. Jelmen will be with us for the Sustainable Nutrition Roundtable on the 17th of October, and we will be addressing how EU countries are implementing the UDR. So you are very welcome to follow him. Again, actually, we own to follow him. So please join us on October 17th. I have to end here the discussion. There are no questions, but if you have any question, or particularly if you have any curiosity that you want to share with David from the FAO, with Edwin, and then also with GAPKI chair, Mr. Eddie Martono, please join us in the lunch, in the dinner that will follow right after. And again, a big applause to the entire panel, and for you for being patient with the electricity cutoff. Thank you so much, everybody. And I leave the floor to the MC. Thank you.